The Galactic Academy of Vethra Prime was considered the finest military training institution in 7 star systems. Its halls had shaped generals, admirals, and warriors from 43 species. Its instructors were feared. Its curriculum was brutal. None of it had ever prepared them for a human. Lyra Vera arrived on a gray morning shuttle, wearing a patched jacket and carrying a single bag over one shoulder. She was unremarkable by human standards, medium height, lean, with dark circles under her eyes and calloused hands that told a story older than her 22 years. By Vethran standards, she looked like prey. "That's the human?" Jomi, a Cathali cadet with 4 muscled arms and scales the color of polished obsidian, said to his companion, New York Dye, a willowy Sorelian whose species averaged 2 meters tall. "She looks like she would break if I sneezed." New York Dye clicked her mandibles in amusement. "I heard humans come from some so-called Deathworld." "Hiwa, do you believe that?" she called across to their third companion, Hiwa, a squat, boulder-built Drevian whose people were known for their strength. Hiwa scratched his chin ridge. "I've read the classifications. Earth is a Class 4 hostile biosphere. Gravitational Index 1.0 standard. Atmosphere includes free-floating microorganisms that kill." He paused. "I still think the reports are exaggerated." None of them noticed that Lyra had heard every word. She said nothing. She simply walked to her assigned bunk, set down her bag, and closed her eyes. Instructor Kale Veyron was a Theran, 7 feet of gray-blue muscle with a crest of bioluminescent spines that flared red when he was displeased. He had trained warriors for 30 years. He had broken cadets from species that could bench-press transport vehicles. He had never trained a human. He decided, on the first morning, that this would be entertaining. "Vera," he called out during the opening physical evaluation, his voice carrying the particular resonance that made smaller species flinch. "You will run the gravity circuit first." The gravity circuit was a 2-kilometer obstacle course run under 2.3 standard gravity, enough to make most cadets vomit by the halfway mark. It was meant to be run by cadets who had been conditioning for weeks. He was assigning it to her on day 1. Jomi snickered. New York Dye looked away, already bored. Hiwa watched with something almost like curiosity. Lyra looked at the course. She looked at Kale Veyron. She said, "Start the timer." She finished in 14 minutes and 32 seconds. The course record was 11 minutes, held by a Drevian cadet from 6 years ago. Hiwa's people had bones like compressed iron and muscles built for digging through tectonic rock. 14 minutes was not the record. But no human had ever finished the course at all. Kale Veyron stared at his datapad. Then at Lyra, who was breathing hard but standing straight, sweat dripping from her jaw. "You will run it again," he said. His spines had stopped flaring. She ran it again. 15 minutes, 8 seconds. Her left knee was bleeding from where she had clipped a barrier on the second pass. She didn't mention it. Jomi was no longer snickering. The hazing began on the 3rd night. It was not sanctioned. It was also not stopped. Kale Veyron had a policy of letting cadets sort themselves out in the first week. It built unit cohesion, he told himself. It showed who was dominant. Jomi and 2 other cadets cornered Lyra in the equipment corridor after lights out. Nothing lethal, just the traditional welcome given to cadets who needed to learn their place. "We just want to talk," Jomi said, his 4 arms spread wide, blocking the corridor. Lyra looked at him. Then at the 2 behind her. Then she looked at Jomi again, and something in her expression shifted, not to fear, but to the kind of careful, clinical assessment that a person develops when fear has been burned away by necessity. "You have 4 arms," she said, almost conversationally. "That means you have 4 joints I can dislocate simultaneously if I hit the right nerve clusters in the right sequence. Your species' secondary nervous system runs along your lateral ridge. 1 strike there and your left 2 arms go numb for approximately 40 minutes. She tilted her head. I've read your biology file. I read everyone's biology file. It seemed practical. The corridor was very quiet. I'm not threatening you, Lyra continued. I'm explaining. On Earth, before I was recruited, I spent 3 years doing wilderness survival work in the Congolian Basin. That's a jungle that has species of fungus that can dissolve bone. Insects that can strip a carcass in 11 minutes. I trapped food with my hands for 72 days straight when my equipment failed. She paused. I am very tired. I would like to sleep. I'd appreciate if we skipped whatever this was supposed to be. She walked through the gap before anyone thought to close it. Jomi stood in the corridor for a long moment. Did she just, the cadet behind him started? Yes, Jomi said quietly. Kale Veyron received the incident report the next morning, not filed by Lyra, but by Jomi, who had apparently been unable to sleep and decided that documentation felt safer than silence. The instructor read it twice. Then he called up Lyra's Earth classification file, the one he had skimmed before her arrival and dismissed as bureaucratic hyperbole. He read it more carefully this time. Earth, Class 4 Hostile Biosphere. Notable features: extreme gravitational density relative to galactic average. Atmospheric oxygen ratio creates cellular oxidative stress in most species within hours. Diverse megafauna including apex predators with no natural enemies. Microbial and viral ecosystem of extreme complexity. Seasonal temperature variance sufficient to cause rapid hypothermia or hyperthermia. Significant geological instability in populated zones. Human physiological adaptations of note. Pain tolerance significantly above galactic average. Theorized evolutionary response to chronic environmental stress. Immune system operates via aggressive pathogen destruction, producing febrile responses that would be considered medically dangerous in most species. Bone density above galactic standard. Adrenaline-cortisol response system capable of sustained activation for periods that would cause organ failure in comparable species. Psychological note: humans demonstrate unusual capacity for habituation to threat stimuli. Species with longer evolutionary histories in stable environments report significantly higher startle response and threat anxiety. Human baselines appear calibrated to expect danger and function within it. Kale Veyron set the datapad down. He had been testing her. He understood now that she had been testing them back, cataloging, observing, filing information away with the patient methodology of something that had grown up in a world that killed you if you stopped paying attention. 6 weeks later, Kale Veyron restructured the first-year curriculum. He added a unit called Adaptive Threat Response and asked Lyra to co-lead it with him. She was still a cadet. It was irregular. He did it anyway. Jomi became her sparring partner, voluntary, this time. He had 4 arms and she had found 12 ways to work around them. He wanted to learn how. She taught him, in exchange for him teaching her Cathali pressure point anatomy, which she absorbed with an attention that made him slightly nervous even now. New York Dye, whose species communicated through chemical signal as much as sound, had initially found humans baffling. She found Lyra baffling in a different way. The human could not read chemical signals, could not sense what New York Dye was feeling, and yet somehow always knew. How? New York Dye had asked once. Micro-expressions, Lyra said. Tension in the secondary mandible. You do it when you're uncertain. She smiled. Humans had to get good at reading things we couldn't smell or hear. We watched faces instead. Haiwa said nothing for most of the semester. Then, on the 40th day, he sat down next to Lyra at dinner and said, the reports were not exaggerated. No, Lyra agreed. How do you live like that? On a world like that? Lyra considered the question seriously, the way she considered everything. You get used to it, she said. Or you don't, and something eats you. But the ones who get used to it, she picked up her fork. We get really used to it. Haiwa was quiet for a moment. Then, I am glad you are on our side. Lyra looked at him, at this mountain of a creature who could crack stone with his hands, who had initially looked at her like she was something fragile and negligible. "Yeah," she said. "Me too." Cale Veyron filed his annual assessment report to the Academy board that evening. Under most notable cadet, he wrote a single line. Lyra Vera, human. Recommend immediate advancement review. Note for board, adjust intake assessments for Deathworld species. Our current rubrics were designed to measure strength. They were not designed to measure what happens when a species learns to survive everything else. He submitted the report. Then he went to bed, and for the first time in 30 years of training warriors, he was glad he was not the one being trained. Some species built themselves strong. Humans built themselves unbreakable. There is a difference, and the galaxy was only beginning to learn it.